Hello, today we're going to be learning substitution. Substitution. So just to backtrack slightly, what we're going to do is I'm going to say, if we only had one equation, is this on the thing? Yes, it is. If we had one equation, and the equation, for example, was y equals 2x, sorry, what I meant was y plus 2x equals 7, then the solution would be, well, a solution could be x equals 3, y equals 1. There's actually thousands and millions and billions of solutions, but this is one a solution. Now, why is it a solution? It's a solution because if we put 3 in for the x and we put 1 in for the y, then it's going to make the sides equal. In this case, they're going to add up to 7, right? So, for example, right, I had, what is that? So I had y plus 2x equals 7. So instead of y, I write 1 in brackets, because when we substitute, we put it in brackets. And then instead of x, we write 3. And then 2 times 3 is 6. And so it works. 7 is, in fact, equal to 7. And that's not terribly exciting. That's algebra. That's what we did. So, well, we didn't exactly at the beginning of the year, but we did something like that at the beginning of the year. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have it with two equations. So with two equations, for example, we might have, let's say we had 2x plus y equals 11, and 3x plus 4y equals 19. Now, what we're going to do is I'm just going to, let's say we want to find a different solution for that. The paper's on the ground, but let's name these equations. So I'm going to call this equation, I'm going to put a 1 in a circle, and that's going to mean that this is equation number 1. I'm going to put a 2 at the circle here, and that means that I'm going to call this equation number 2. So if you look at equation number 1, so 2x plus y equals 11, one solution might be x equals 3 and y equals 5. So that's one solution, right? If we plugged it in, we would get, oops, I didn't show it over there. Right, if we plugged it in, we would get 2 times 3 plus 5 equals 11. 6 plus 5 is 11. And it actually works. But if we tried to take that exact same solution and put it into the second equation, then what we would have, so the second equation, what was it again? It was 3x plus 4y equals 19. So if you have our second equation, 3x plus 4y equals 19, and we try to say that, try our solution over there, and we would get 3 times 3 plus 4 times 5 equals 19. So 9 plus 20 equals 19, so 29 equals 19. And actually, of course, is 29 equal to 19? The answer is no, it is not. So I will not put a red X on it. I will put a black X on it. I'm going to get the pen out of my Ziploc bag here. So that is not a solution. So 3 and 5 works for one equation, but it does not work for both equations. Works for one, does not work for both. So going back to this thing over here, what we want is we're looking for a solution that works for both equations. And the answer, by the way, turns out to be 5 and 1. You don't know that yet, but it does work for both. 2 times 5 is 10 plus 1 is 11. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 4 is 19. So 5 and 1 is the solution. But it's not easy to come up with it, so we're going to have a method of coming up with this, essentially a way of working it out. And the way what the method is going to be called is, what I said at the beginning, substitution. So I'm going to show you how we do substitution to figure out what the solution to the equation is. So you're going to need a whole other page for this, so it's going to take up a bit of space. So let's go back to here. Substitution. So our equations were 2x plus y equals 11 and 3x plus 4y equals 19. And remember, I'm going to call that equations 1 and I'm going to call it equations 2. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to figure out, well, again, I'm trying to find a solution, which I already told you what the solution is going to be, but we don't know it yet. So we have a couple of steps, and the first step is going to be we need to isolate a variable. So we're going to have to rearrange an equation. And we're going to rearrange either equation 1 or equation 2. So it turns out what we want to look for is we want to look for which one of these. We have 4 candidates. We have the 2x or the y, or the 3x or the 4y. And any one of these things, any one of these can be isolated. But the one we're going to isolate is the one that's the most alone. And by the most alone, I mean the one that doesn't have the number in front. The fancy math name for that, of course, is the coefficient is 1. But for your purposes, you're looking for a letter that's alone and does not have a number next to it. And so that's an equation 1. So I'm going to rearrange equation 1. So the way I rearrange it is I'm going to rewrite the equation. So 2x plus y equals 11. And then 3x, no, that's it. I'm just going to write equation 1. Now I want this to be alone, so now we're going to use our algebra. So remember when we had something we wanted to bring it to the other side, here it's positive because there's an invisible positive in front of it. And then when we bring it to the other side, it's going to become negative. So it's going to become y equals, flip it to the other side, minus 2x plus 11. Now I don't have a ruler, but if I had a ruler, I would probably make a pretty box around it. And I'm going to put a 3 here to show that A, because I'm going to use that equation, it's going to be equation number 3, and the y is alone, it's isolated. And that's the end of our first step. So this is kind of like our step 1. So our next step is going to be, we're going to sub equation 3, the one we just made, into the equation that we didn't use. So we rearranged 1. The equation that we did not use is number 2. So I'm going to sub equation 3 into equation 2. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's not totally obvious. So equation 2 is, so I'm going to start off by rewriting equation 2. So 3x plus 4y equals 19. But what I know is y is the same as this. So y and negative 2x plus 11 are exactly the same. So what I'm going to do over here is wherever I see a y, instead of writing y, I'm going to write this minus 2x plus 11. So let's do it. So I'm going to write 3x, nothing special there, plus 4. And now, and this goes in a bracket, of course. Well, it's not of course, but that's kind of what I did on the, when I was putting numbers in before on the other page. Whenever we sub in, we're always going to put it into a bracket. So instead of y, I wrote that pink stuff. So nothing else changed. Everything else I wrote exactly the same, but the y became the minus 2x plus 11. Then we're going to have to algebra it a little bit. So when there's a number in front of a bracket, you may or may not recall from 3 weeks ago when we left off on school, that this number multiplies into both things in the bracket. So what we have is, oops. So we're going to have our 3x. 4 times negative 2. You could use your calculator if you want. This is my calculator, by the way. I like it a lot. If you don't have one, you should maybe order one online. They're good calculators. Make sure, don't forget, you're going to need one eventually in about a couple weeks that has the sin, cos, and tan buttons on them. If they don't have those buttons, you're not going to be able to do the next unit that is trigonometry. So and it should be when you press, does it show up? If you press sin, yeah, like the letters SIN should appear on the screen. Okay. So 3x minus 8x plus 44 equals 19. And then we're going to move things around, collect like terms. So we're going to keep the 3x and the negative 8x on the same side. The 44 goes on the other side. It was positive. Now it becomes negative. So 3 minus 8, grab the calculator. It turns out to be minus 5x. 19 minus 44. Definitely going to calculator that one. So it's minus 25. That's good. It's negative 25. We're almost done. We have to solve for x. The way we solve for x now is we divide both sides by whatever's in front of the x. Remember the fancy math name for that is coefficient again. These cancel and we get x equals 5. And we're pretty happy about that, so we will put a box around it. We're almost done. So we figured out what x is. We have to figure out what y is now. And remember, just to reiterate, the goal of what we're doing here is we want to find a solution to this equation. And as I told you, at the beginning, the solution does turn out to be x is 5, y is 1, but we don't know that yet. Well, we found out that x is 5. Let's find out that y is 1. So the next step is going to be, we're going to sub x equals 5. Oops, that did not show up. I'm going to get a new piece of paper. So our next step is going to be, we're going to sub, I missed again. There. We're going to sub x equals 5, and we're going to put it into equation 3. So I'm going to start off by writing equation 3, which is y equals minus 2x plus 11. But what is x? X is 5. That's what we figured out in the last step. So y equals minus 2 times 5 plus 11. So y equals minus 10 plus 11. And negative 10 plus 11. If you don't know how to do it, as usual, calculator, don't forget the negative keys. Negative 10 plus 11 is 1. And is 1. And I'll put a box around that. And then we bring it all together. It's kind of our conclusion. And the conclusion is that the solution to the linear system is x equals 5, y equals 1. And that's the thing. A linear system is a fancy math name for two equations. And then we're done. So what I'd like you to do now, I'm going to stop this video right now. But what you're going to do is you're going to take, so the exact same equation. The exact same equation. 3x plus 4y equals 19. And then try to solve it yourself. So if you need to look at the notes you've made, do that. But otherwise get through that. And then in the next video, I'm going to go through some examples. Okay? If you have any questions, you could put them in as comments. And that's it.